G'day guys and welcome back to another video on my channel Nintendo Down Under. The Nintendo 64 controller. Why is it the best controller in the world? Yes, it gets joked about with memes. And yes, this little fella can do some serious damage to your palm. But with all that aside, yes, you're about to find out why this is the world's best controller. Here we go. Alright, let's start with the negative stuff first. Yes, the joystick can be a problem today, or back in the day it was as well. It's plastic on plastic. The mechanisms inside can break quite easily. So if you played this moderately or intensely, and if you're unlucky after a couple of years, this would just wear away and break. This one's very firm, as you can hear it, but they can sometimes just dangle there. And this one's quite firm because I don't use this one. I'm actually currently playing Banjo-Kazooie and I'm trying to fight the witch at the moment, and the controller I'm using is starting to stuff up, and I'm trying to sprint one way and all of a sudden it's not sprinting and I'm just walking and I got hit by the witch. So that sucked. So that can happen. The second problem. How do you hold the controller? How do you hold it to get every single button? You can't. You can't hold the controller comfortably in your hand and have access to every single button. But that's okay because Nintendo didn't want you to hold every button. There's a reason why it was invented like this. So the three ways that Nintendo wanted you to use this controller. Obviously the traditional way we know. Your 3D platforming games. Easy to have access to every button. Can get to the Z button behind. Use the camera. Very, very good. But at the time, 3D platforming gaming was just starting to take off. So they invented 3 controllers within one controller. So for your first person shooting games, their main idea was for you to be able to hold it like this. Easy access to all buttons, to your D-pad, away you go. Again, 3D platforming for games was just taking off. So they also had, if you cut the 3 handles away, you've almost got a Super Nintendo controller in your hand, just like for your 2D games. Because again, 3D platforming was just so new at the time, so they wasn't sure if every company was going to develop 3D platforming games. It ended up being pretty much that way, that once the system launched and everyone was getting into your Super Mario 64 and how amazing that was, everybody else wanted a piece of the pie, so really 2Ding wasn't really used. But Nintendo wasn't sure at the time, taking big risks, and that's why with this awesome controller, it's not just one controller, at the time was meant for 3 different controllers. Another feature that Nintendo just doesn't get credit for, but at the time, with the controller, look at the back, there's a port, and as most of you probably know, that we could add things like memory cards, transfer packs, and rumble packs. It just inserts into the back of your controller, and away you go. That was awesome at the time. To mid to late 90s, that was a first, and it's really changed the game now. We take for granted what controllers do these days. They have all these sorts of amazing features. But back to, like I said, to your mid to late 90s, that was awesome. Nintendo do love pushing the boundaries. Sometimes, look, we can be critical. They don't always get it right. You know, Nintendo Labo, I'm not sure if that was a big hit with them. There's been the Wii U fail. GameCube wasn't as big in some parts of the world, but at the same time, Nintendo, with their game making, their handhelds, they've also made some amazing controllers and consoles. Nintendo love pushing the boundaries, and I think that's why we like getting Nintendo, because what are they going to think of next? It also needs to be mentioned that at the time, Nintendo got amazing reviews with this controller. Critics, gamers, everybody really loved it. It wasn't until about maybe a year or two later when the PlayStation dual analog controller came out where it really trumped it. It improved. Instead of having the one analog stick and having C for camera, it had 2. So one could control the camera, one could control movements. That really probably trumped the controller there. But did PlayStation learn some things from Nintendo there? I think they probably did. And do you know what? If you give this controller to, say, people these days, like kids, for example, kids in my family, we played Mario Party not too long ago, Mario Party 2. I gave them this controller and they weren't quite sure how to hold it. So yes, if you haven't grown up with this controller, it can be quite difficult at first to use. Once they got the hang of it, it was fine and they had great fun great fun playing on this controller. And before I finish up today's video, a bit off topic, but a big shout out to my best friends who chipped in and got me these 4 awesome Pokemon Nintendo Switch controllers. I'll quickly go through them. So we've got the blue Squirtle one, which is really cool. The green Bulbasaur one, which is probably my favorite, green being my favorite color and all. And you've got the Charmander red, which is also really cool. I love the colors of this, and the Pikachu yellow. So I'm looking forward to displaying and having them in my collection. Yeah, big thank you to those guys for doing that for me. They know I'm a collector. They know I like Nintendo. So for all them to get together and put a bit of money in to get those controls for me was awesome. So what do you reckon? Where do you rate this controller? Is it one of your favorite? Do you think it's one of Nintendo's best? Or do you find it quite annoying and irritating? I think it's fantastic. Yes, obviously controllers these days are much more comfortable, but you have to remember that they thought ahead. They were thinking, trying to foresee that 3 different games were coming to the Nintendo 64, and that was really smart thinking on behalf of Nintendo. If you haven't already, guys, don't forget to like me on Facebook, Nintendo Down Under. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram to see daily photos of my collection every day at Nintendo Down Under. Thank you very much for subscribing, and take care.